Hello everyone. Welcome to Kanban for Everyone, our very first in the series, brought to you by ProKanban.org. My name is Colleen Johnson. I'm the CEO of ProKanban.org, and we're going to be talking today about Kanban for marketing. I'm joined today by Monica Georgieff and Maria Matarelli. I couldn't be more excited to have both of you here today. I feel like you guys are both so well known in this community for being incredible agile marketers. I'd love for you each to take a moment to introduce yourself. Monica, why don't you go first?
Thanks for the invitation, Colleen. So my name is Monica Georgieff. I'm an Agile coach and trainer at Agile Sherpas. I'm also an Agile marketing practitioner by day and night at Automagically Marketing. So I continue to be a marketer by trade, but have spent most of my career as an Agilist and a lean marketer as well. So really excited to talk about Kanban for marketing, which was sort of my entry point into this different way of work for marketers. So I, like you, Colleen, could not be more excited to talk about this.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time to join us today. Maria, how about you?
Yeah, Maria Matarelli, co-founder of the Agile Marketing Academy. And we have been leading training classes on agile marketing around the world over the last 5 to 6 years in Shanghai, Singapore, Thailand, India, Portugal, throughout the US. And it's been exciting to see how companies from a variety of different industries, different backgrounds, different geographic locations, all can benefit from these concepts of agile applied to marketing. My background is also as an agile coach, a certified Scrum trainer. And it's great to see, I think, with marketing, when you're using agile development, you can get to market faster. You can have different features. With marketing, there's dollars tied to it. So it's exciting to see the results that come in with agile applied to marketing. And I'm one of our certified agile marketing trainers at the Agile Marketing Academy. And our classes are also dual certified with IC Agile and also accredited through the Heart of Agile Academy.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, I'm going to kick this off with a few questions to get us going. But for everyone joining us live on LinkedIn, you have the ability to add questions in the comments as well. So we'll make sure we have plenty of time to answer those viewer comments at the end here. But let's just kick off by talking about what the common challenges are that you run into as a marketer when you're trying to deliver value in a way that's, effective, efficient, and most importantly, predictable. Maria, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, there's definitely some common themes that we see with the companies we work with. The first one is not having the right message to market match. We often hear people trying to be everything to everyone, and sometimes the message just will completely miss. And so it's really important to look at, what's the problem we're trying to solve? What's the value of the solution? And can we connect on the pain? Can we connect on how we solve that and really focus on who is it that we want to serve? And so there's that. There's also marketing cycles that run so long that it's like running the faucet and set it and forget it. And, you're just letting the ad dollars spend, money's coming in, but not really looking at what's the real return. And most recently, one of the other challenges we see is that the economy, the market, everything is even more dynamic than ever before. And so we cannot market the same way we did 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The complete landscape has changed. And so all of these are reasons that agile marketing and using a more iterative approach can be incredibly important for companies today.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm hearing something there about maybe small batch size, getting small things out the door quickly, right? Where all of that becomes more important when you have to move fast and get feedback fast from who your audience is, right?
Oh, yes, that minimum viable campaign, not the be all end all, the whole shebang, but the minimum viable campaign that we can launch with.
Yeah. Monica, what kind of challenges are you running into?
A lot of similar things to what Maria said, but I think the main problem for marketers, especially in larger organizations, are that they have a prioritization issue. We are smack in the middle, at the center of our organizations, which means that we have to communicate with everyone internally and all of our customers externally. So we end up getting pulled in a lot of different directions, if you will. And it's difficult to tell when you're not comparing apples to apples, what to work on first and what the right time to do it is. And in a sense, that's why it can be really distracting to have a lot of stakeholders vying for your time internally, because you end up losing some of the focus that you should have on your customers and putting it in internal stakeholders instead, which are also important for sure. But sort of keeping that balance, I think, has been something that I've really seen marketers challenged with, and Agile and Lean, Kanban and Scrum really help with stuff like that. MVP is probably one of my favorite sort of agile concepts for marketing more generally. The idea that we don't have to put everything out all at once, that we're not going to lose somebody's attention or lose an opportunity. No, we're actually going to de-risk our approach if we go forward with an MVP, with a smaller subset of the work, instead of trying to go all in on an idea that we had in isolation from our customers. So all of that, a lot of challenges in marketing, I think, which makes it exciting.
Yeah. Well, and Monica, you said answering, to internal stakeholders or executives and your external audience. Do you find that does that often manifest as having multiple different, like, number one priorities or multiple different queues of work that you're looking to pull from?
Yeah, of course. I mean, before we introduce backlogs or get into that language at all, I mean, the first time we talk about backlogs, it turns out that marketers have 10 or 15 backlogs because they're part of many different teams, they're serving many different stakeholders, they're trying to please many different customers. And so that creates a lot of internal conflict, if you will, a lot of friction between those parties.
I'd imagine burnout's also high, right, in this industry. Just listening to you both describe some of the challenges. I mean, I think with everything moving so quickly, lots of demands, lots of number one priorities, I'm sure mental health and burnout is top of mind for your teams as well. So let's talk through what things have you tried in your careers? Monica, you already mentioned some Scrum, some Lean, a few different Agile approaches. What kind of things have you tried out to try to alleviate some of these challenges in your teams?
So my case is a little bit less traditional, if you will. I actually started my career as a marketer in a Kanban team, which is super rare. I mean, in 2016, no one was really talking about Kanban in marketing or Agile and Lean in marketing. But because we were building a process management software tool for Kanban teams, we decided to sort of drink our own champagne, if you will, and try out Kanban in marketing. So I've been a Kanban marketer. I've been converted. I didn't need to be converted. I started out sort of baptism by fire, if you will, in Kanban. And I've continued to use that throughout my career as a coach and as the founder of an Agile marketing agency, which is something that's really sort of up and coming now as agencies convert to this model, as well as internal teams and departments inside organizations. So I have tried Scrum in the past based on some of the teams that I've worked with as a coach. And I admit that Scrum actually works really well for some types of marketing teams that are more project focused, that have a more clear scope, a longer term strategy, and a clear endpoint to their projects. But most of the time, because our success hinges on being responsive, Kanban is an excellent choice for many, many marketers, including myself, right, to this day.
How about for you, Maria?
Yeah, so a lot of teams that we work with may use the Scrum framework. Also, some teams use Kanban. So looking at the time-boxed approach versus the flow-based approach. And so really, it's all about the prioritization. And I think one of the most effective techniques that I've had recently that's worked really well with some teams that I've been working with is limiting the work in progress. And so a classic Kanban technique to look at, let's not try to get all of the things done. It's back to what is that minimal increment we can do. And when we're working with marketing, a lot of times we're working with creatives, right? Like, when is something done? Like, they want it to be perfect, right? What is the graphic? What is the overall polished thing that we're going to put out? And so, sometimes that can be a challenge, but really looking at how can we limit the work in progress? How can we focus on the overall flow and our throughput and get something out to market? That's incredibly effective. So from working with individual companies that want to enhance their marketing to marketing agencies, one of the latest things that we've been exploring is how we can leverage AI and be able to have artificial intelligence help assist us in the marketing process so that we're not having to do all of the repetitive outreach ourselves, and we free up our team members to be able to do more of the work that requires creative thought and connecting with customers and not getting burnout on the repetitive process. So what we're seeing is that we can leverage technology along with these different frameworks and methodologies in Agile that are going to help optimize how the marketing team works.
That's very cool. And does that mean for the AI that you're working with, are you using metrics to help you decide where to invest more of that effort into, or pivot back to a more manual effort?
Yeah, well, the coolest thing is that as you're training up the AI, it's like training an employee, but they do it right every time after you show them. So it's really looking at, what is it that is the proper response in this scenario and getting that up and running smoothly. And what we're able to do is we see that our team members, they're able to talk to the customers that are ready. If someone's not ready, then they're not scheduled for that appointment yet. And we can check back with them. We can tag them. And so that's able to free up our team members. And, oftentimes we see there's a gap between marketing and sales. And so if we can bridge that gap, if we can leverage technology to do that, if we can streamline our process and how we work, it's incredibly effective.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, just talking about some of those gaps in my experience of coaching teams, whether it's Scrum or Kanban, there's, always a gap, I think, or some friction in between engineering and marketing. It's often date related. And there is that gap sometimes in between marketing and sales. And I think one of the other things that tends to really help from a Kanban perspective is just that visibility, right? Of here's what we're working on now. Like you said, we're limiting what we have in progress. Here's the options of what we could work on next. And maybe we're using data to help select that thing. But as soon as it becomes more of a black hole, I think there's a lot of friction just in not knowing. But for those outside teams that could be impacted or impacted by marketing or impacting marketing teams. It's definitely true. Yeah. Monica, you said that you got trial by fire into the Kanban world from being part of a Kanban team and a Kanban organization. Maria, how were you introduced to Kanban initially?
Yeah, so my background actually started off in marketing. That was my major in college with a concentration in professional sales. And then a recruiter saw Microsoft Project on my resume, and I got whisked into the project management world. So it started with Six Sigma, then moving on to traditional project management, and then discovering the Scrum framework, and then Kanban after that. And so it really has been incredible to see not just how companies are wanting to streamline their processes across different types of projects, but I've loved being able to come full circle back to what I originally had studied, which was marketing, and see how we can take these techniques and kind of bring the best of project management and bring things like Scrum and Kanban into the marketing world, because it's only going to help, right? We're increasing the visibility. We're increasing the collaboration of the team. And it's so incredibly effective. And again, I love seeing that we can actually see the results and the dollars that come back when we use Agile in marketing.
That's awesome. Yeah. One of the things I've heard from marketing teams in the past is that it can be especially difficult for them to work in Scrum or Kanban because they're all very specialized. Everyone on the team has a very specific role that they're doing on a marketing team. Monica, have you run into that, and how have you worked around that, or has Kanban helped or made that worse when you've got high levels of specialization?
Yeah, I mean, what we've discovered at Agile Sherpa is we put out the State of Agile Marketing report every year. I mean, I can send that over to some of the people that are watching us today. It's at stateofagilemarketing.com. And the 5th edition and all of the previous ones sort of indicated a trend that most marketers are using some sort of hybrid between Kanban and Scrum. And I think it's partly because there's a lot of variety in the types of marketing teams that are out there. It's not one size fits all. And so the adaptability of marketing and weaving that into some of the more prescriptive practices coming from Scrum can actually be really helpful to customize and tailor a unique solution that allows marketers to apply Agile and Lean methodologies, right, in a way that works for them. So I think cross-functional teams is a struggle for marketing because we do have a lot of that specialization, but the benefits of being able to share expertise, knowledge share, and skill development on the team level, not just the individual level, has a lot of benefits for marketers that might actually be more than for software developers, if you will. Because if we're able to help each other, we can move a lot faster. We get to streamline the whole process. We're able to keep our WIP limits, right, as Maria was saying, very important for us in the marketing function. So I think that hybrid allows us to build more T-shaped marketers in the long term, which is something we can really benefit from.
How about from your side, Maria? What do you see in terms of team specialization?
Yeah, so yes, there could be a challenge in team members being used to working in a siloed environment, though, of course, getting them together is going to be more effective for looking at the overall big picture of what we're doing. One of the larger challenges we've seen is actually the silos of the teams themselves when it comes to management and when it comes to actually releasing something to market. So when you look at the larger the company, the more those silos are across departments or groups. And one of the companies that we've been working with over the last couple of years, about $2 billion in revenue. And what was happening was we're teaching their team how they can apply more of an agile marketing approach. And they're like, well, wait a minute, how do we do this when the direction we get is from the leadership group, the managers? They're giving us critique over the copy, over the images. And it actually isn't always based on empirical feedback. It's not based on what's actually performing in the market. And it's like, well, do you guys see the results of what performs well? And they have literally no insight to what actually works. So they put out a marketing campaign and that feedback loop never makes it full circle. And so, yeah, it's a challenge to get all the team together, right? Sometimes, because we want to make sure that they are being cross-functional and they are aware of what each other are doing. But an even larger challenge that I've seen is not having the full feedback loop to what campaigns are even effective. So this team is working on this campaign, they launch it. There's another group, another department that looks at the data and analyzes that, or runs the ads, or sends out the mailers. And then the leadership is using their preference as feedback to the team. No, I don't like this. Make it look like this, but it's not actually based on the data. So yes, among the team, we want to have them be more cross-functional, but also we want to have more cohesiveness across the different groups in marketing. We want to make sure that our team members are seeing and understanding what kind of creative is effective, what's getting the best response, what kind of copy works. And so really having that whole feedback loop and more collaboration across groups and departments is incredibly important too.
And just going off of that, Maria, I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but I think that's why portfolio Kanban tends to be really effective for situations like that, because it can connect teams, not just the people within the team, to be more cross-functional. And the cool thing about Kanban is that you can apply it in a functional group as well, right? Even though cross-functional is a great setting and a great environment for sharing work, functional group can just as easily practice Kanban from my perspective. And if they're part of a larger system that a portfolio Kanban can sort of represent, you end up having a better idea of where you stand in relationship to some of the other teams. So I totally agree with that.
That's a great point too. You mentioned, and when you talked about these feedback loops and the data that you're collecting, my head immediately went to cadences. Like, what do the cadences look like then for planning for a marketing team? Do you follow, and Monica, you touched on this, like maybe it's a little bit of a blend of a Scrum cadence with a Kanban flow, but things change quickly. Like, are you still planning in 2-week increments for a lot of the teams that you're working with? And does that change kind of based on the specialization or maybe where they're contributing to the process?
I can speak to that. First, I think I've seen a mix of both. I mean, a lot of marketing teams, when they start out with any framework, Kanban or Scrum, they do benefit from some of that structure that planning in 2-week cadences provides, 2 or 3-week cadences. I find that the longer the projects are, for example, a large content asset like a white paper in marketing, I think those types of teams, if they're a functional group, they benefit from longer planning cycles, 3 to 4 weeks, because those projects are so long and that's what they process. But if you're like an email marketing team, for example, you sort of have to plan just in time the way that pure Kanban sort of suggests in order to be able to keep up with a lot of the changing circumstances that affect what you're going to be putting out there. So if you want a timely email campaign, you're probably not going to want to wait until your next sprint planning, right?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. How about on the review side too? I know, Maria, you were mentioning this review cycle of like, how did these different campaigns perform and how are we using that data to fold back into what we're doing next? Do you do those reviews on a regular cadence or are those more on demand?
Yeah, so typically we'll have a lot of teams will do a general time box that they'll plan in, because it does help to have some of that structure, right? Or have a goal for the creative to be done by. Though we have teams where if we're running ads and there's 5 ads that we're running to split test, there's 2 that are not getting any real clicks. Like, we'll shut those off 2 days in. We don't need to wait until the end of a time box in order to update. So it's a little bit more of that hybrid approach that we were talking about earlier. So yes, it can be helpful to plan in a cadence, or at least have an idea for the next couple of weeks or the next month, what it is that we plan to put out or have a delivery date, though we're not going to let that prevent us from responding immediately, more in real time, as you often see with Kanban, right? So if something's not working, let's make that adjustment. Let's not leave the faucet running and the ad dollar spending when nobody's clicking on that thing, right? And so we can actually reallocate as soon as we see something's not working, reallocate that ad spend to the ads that are performing best.
Yeah. And do you set those targets at the beginning, or is that a more real-time decision? Like to say, if we've spent this much and we're not getting the return, we'll pull this campaign, or is that something you're just reviewing as part of your daily conversations?
Yeah, it tends to be a little bit of a mix, right? So the team may have a general standard, or hey, if there's no clicks on something, we'll shut it down. Like that's a given, right? Or there may be some performance metrics that a team will identify. If it's within this threshold, we'll keep it going. But what we find is really important to constantly be looking at the data. So it's absolutely not waiting till the end of a week or 2 weeks. It's looking at it every day, if not right, as frequently as necessary, to make sure that we're optimizing the campaigns, because we learn so much based on the behavior, and the feedback that we can get is so quick, especially when we're doing online marketing. We can see page views, we can see clicks, we can see heat maps of where people go on a page. And so we have so much at our fingertips with technology that helps us more than ever before. And when you look at it from a consumer perspective, as much data that is being tracked on individuals, that a lot of it we freely give on social media, right? It can be concerning, but as a marketer, it's helping us to customize and reach more people that could really benefit from our product, that people that might have that need that we're going to solve. And so there's so much capability that we have. And so it really is a continuous refinement type of activity to look at where those results are, if you want to optimize what you're doing, right? Like if some companies, they'll turn on the ad spend and there's money coming in and they don't really watch it because they're getting some results. And a lot of times they don't even know what they don't know. They don't know how much better that campaign could run if they're not iterating.
Yeah. There's probably a lesson here that you guys could be teaching a lot of software teams in terms of data review and how frequently to be looking at all of that feedback and making decisions from it. Do you find it all from looking at that data? Is there any kind of data fatigue? Like, do you have to whittle that down to a couple core metrics to look at so that you're not getting too many signals at once?
We want to have a little bit of an idea of what you're looking for, right? So we might identify what are the core metrics, what's our cost of customer acquisition, have an idea for what's the lifetime value of the customer, looking at, what's effective, what threshold do we want to be within, and then really measuring to that. So there's definitely some things that you may identify ahead of time, and there might be some other things that emerge where you look at even the quality of the lead. So we'll have marketing teams that, they're running the ads, we've got leads coming in, so they're doing their job, though the quality of the leads, we talk to the salespeople, they're like, something's gone very wrong here. Like the quality of the leads is not what it used to be. And so it's having that communication open between marketing and sales that can also help to optimize the marketing that's being done.
Yeah, maybe that's that great opportunity you're talking about too, Monica, to start to scale portfolio, right? Of how do you move these conversations to connect teams even outside of marketing. Well, I mentioned at the beginning predictability, and I know dates are sometimes, a part of the reality for marketing teams as well. And I see a question here from Paul. How have you used probabilistic forecasting for some of the work the marketing team is doing?
I can jump onto that first. It's been a challenge. I mean, what Maria said earlier about marketers being creatives, I think it's really hard to put a deadline to creative work, but at the same time, going back to the prioritization and the stakeholders that we have to please, we do want to have some idea about what it means to be a predictable team and what we're going to be able to deliver within a certain time frame. So if we're more on the Scrum side, our velocity and the story points that we calculate per sprint can help us do that. If we have a general idea of the range of the capacity of our team, if we don't have people on vacation, we don't have people off sick, maybe it's 100 points per 2-week active sprint period. And that can give us an idea of the fact that that is how much we're able to do if we are all hands on deck at full capacity in the upcoming sprint. So that's something that we can sort of keep in mind. With Kanban, I really like using cycle time for that. I've also used throughput, but the caveat there is that your work items need to be similarly sized so that you can actually have a throughput that you can trust. Marketers like to calculate that on a weekly basis, I've noticed. How many cards are we able to get across the finish line within a week? How does that compare to the next week, and so on? So it's not so much about adding deadlines to specific work items. It's more a question of capacity within the team as a unit. So it's not about what I can do or what you can do. It's what we can do together based on our historical data that we've collected. And we're talking about process data here specifically.
Okay. Does that process for you require that you're looking at apples to apples for work item types, like a campaign versus maybe online ads or something different? Do you have to separate things out that way to be able to forecast it?
Yeah, and that's, you're getting to the exact challenge that we deal with when we deal with marketing, that one marketing team can be doing many different types of activities at the same time, many different types of activities in their backlogs. It's not like a software team where a lot of the work is code-based, right? We have an email campaign living alongside an ad campaign and a social media campaign in the same workflow. So the question then becomes, how do we break down those larger campaigns into similarly sized pieces, at least, right? So they can live side by side. What allows them to be an apples to apples comparison is the breakdown of that work to more actionable bite-sized pieces if possible.
Yeah. Maria, how about from your side? What tools are you using to be able to deliver predictably?
Yeah, so when we look at, maybe even relative sizing and what's the work that people can get out the door in a time box, looking at what are the results of the ads, being able to go back and be checking in and seeing what's actually been effective and doing more of the things that are effective and actually making the decisions to cut out things that we are doing that aren't effective. So when we look at some companies that we've worked with, they might be running ads on radio and television and even doing postcard mailers and online advertising. And they might be cranking out this marketing collateral and there's sales coming in, though sometimes they're not actually looking at what's the effectiveness of the actual return for those dollars spent. And if they're spending tens of thousands of dollars through one marketing channel, I mean, we can crank out new campaigns as quick as we want, though if the result's not there, it's really not ultimately worth it. So we do want to keep an eye on, what's the velocity of the team? How can we ensure that we're delivering regularly? Also looking at what's the actual result and what's effective. And let's not continue doing the same things that are not really ultimately as effective. So looking at how we can measure that and thinking about that as we're working on the campaigns, as we're putting out the marketing collateral. And in addition to that, sometimes delays can happen. Like we might think work is, very small effort, though sometimes the delays can come from outside the team. And it goes further into looking at leadership and the review process. So there's more things to look at than even just within the team. It's looking at, well, what can we get to market, but what's the actual result of that? And then how fast can we release? What's the approval process? And do we have leadership support? Is that streamlined, that approval process, in order to then get to market faster? So the team may have their velocity of what they can put out within a time frame, or we may have a regular cadence that they're working in, though we don't want to only look at that. We want to have consideration for how fast does it get approved, or how many revisions are needed, and what does that look like? So, going back to cycle time and looking at we're going to have the team gets it done, but then we have to do 5 revisions, but it's based on a personal preference from someone that's a manager rather than the real market feedback, we can quickly find ourselves being delayed much longer, something taking much longer than we realized. So there is a lot of communication that should happen, understanding across the different groups, like who does what, right? Being clear on who has what authority or autonomy and what kind of approval is needed. And we always want to look at that in addition to just how the team's working.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting to hear you say that about external dependencies. I think, all teams kind of run into that at some point, right? Where it's like, how do we manage the work that we don't have control over? Have you found different elements of a Kanban system or a Kanban board to help visualize, like, hey guys, we have 20 things pending external request, or we have something pending an external review that's 3 months old, for example? Are things like that helpful in moving that type of blocker out of the way?
Oh, absolutely. I love when we have our Kanban board, being able to color code, looking at the different initiatives, look at the prioritization, having a roadblock column. Love the roadblock column, so we can see right then and there what's stuck and bring as much visibility to that as possible. And also tracking cycle time and, using tools that will automatically tell you, when was this item added to the queue? When has it started? When is it done? And reflecting on that as a team and saying, is this really how long that this takes? And, sometimes, especially with creatives, you might get stuck, right? And you might have a delay, and, sometimes pairing can help with that and getting past and moving something out, because we could sit on something for 3 weeks, or we could put it out within a week and actually get real market feedback, right? And so looking for what are those indicators where we are being delayed. And a lot of times I've noticed when something's sitting there stuck, when you actually get around to it, it might only take a couple hours to finish. And it was just this tiny little pebble of a roadblock that we ended up letting us trip us up and delay us for possibly weeks. And so really keeping an eye on that and looking at where are those dependencies, what are the things that we need to be looking out for. And that's where, if a team does have a Scrum Master role, that can help to have someone that's focused on what is the roadblock and what is it that we can remove. And having the visibility of a Kanban board, I think, is essential. And we actually create an Agile Marketing Canvas as well. So we can look at, all right, what's the product that we're putting out? Who's the persona that we're targeting? Can we visualize what it is that we think is the right combination of, we can even take the user story, the who, the what, and the why. And we can use that in marketing, similar but different to how it's done in a backlog in software development. We look at, as a who, I need what so that why. Well, as a who's that end customer we're targeting with this campaign? What is the feature that we think is going to get their attention, and why do they need it? What's the pain that they have, and we can help make that problem go away. And we can actually make our hypothesis. We can look at, all right, what's the customer journey? Where do we think they'll encounter the problem? Where will they encounter us? How can we help? How do they use what our solution is? And then what's our 80-20 hypothesis? The 20% of the effort that gets 80% of the results. We can actually have these all visual on an Agile Marketing Canvas, so we can actually see, what are we focusing on as a team? Which personas are we targeting? What's the result? And then retrospecting on that. So the more visual we can make things, the more visual we can make the work on a Kanban board. It's going to help our team stay in sync and help us keep that flow running smoothly.
Yeah. It always seems so simple, right? And I feel like it has such a big impact to be able to see all of that in one place. It's easy to forget that. Well, along the same lines, I see a question here about tools. Daniel asks, what most common challenges you noticed with deciding swim lanes, and which tool you prefer to use for organizing your Kanban board?
My favorite tool is a physical board. And I know a lot of teams are virtual now, so that isn't always easy to do. We've got teams, a lot of teams are using Jira at larger organizations. Nothing really cuts it like an in-person board. So the times that we can be in person, or the days that we were doing that, having that visual board, I've always seen as the most effective. And there's so many incredible tools out there that are actually able to help you to be able to visualize the work, be able to track the cycle time and things like that. And so there's a lot of great options. Usually a lot of the companies that we work with, they already have a tool of choice. And so we're often customizing to that. Sometimes the challenge is that people actually, they work based around the tool rather than planning the work and then having the tool support that. So we always want to be careful about letting the tool kind of manage or have an implication in how you plan and manage the work, and want to encourage the teams to really have your foundations down, right? If you're using a flow-based framework like Kanban, don't let the tool dictate how you plan and manage the work. Like, have your team's flow decided, have your working agreement, have your understandings, have your goals of, what is it that you want to how long should it take for something to get through and be delivered, and really being able to, I found, some companies, they'll actually switch tools because they think the tool's the problem. They'll jump 2 or 3 or 4 tools. And it's like, the tool wasn't the problem. It's the team's commitment to the tool. So I really just want to encourage people to make sure that you stick with the basics, the foundations of the methodology or framework that you're using, and let the tool help amplify that rather than dictate how you work.
Yeah, definitely. I see that all the time too, that we want the tool to fix all of our problems. Monica, I think I'd love to hear your take on tools. And I see another question that kind of goes alongside this from Pearl, of what tools have you found helpful with making some of these things more visible, right? Things like, I heard, basically, I think, Maria, where you were kind of headed, there was a little bit of like a service level expectation. How long do we expect this to take? Or is it aged past a due date? Is it blocked, right? What kind of tools are you using, and how do you make those kind of indicators visible?
Yeah, I mean, with our teams, I think we've tried all of the tools out there, and it turns out none of them are absolutely perfect, especially when marketers are customizing and tailoring their approach to Agile and Lean. They're never going to find a perfect tool. And in some ways, the perfect tool is literally a physical board, but more and more of the teams that we work with are remote. So they do actually benefit from having something that they can easily update, that they can share during a daily stand-up that is virtual. But Kanban often gets reduced just to that visual workflow element, which I admit is a really key part of the framework itself. But there's a lot of other elements to think about when you're choosing a tool, right? The simpler, the better, so that there's no learning curve for your team. Swim lanes are not a deal breaker. I mean, even if the tool doesn't have swim lanes for you to separate the different types of work, that can actually be a positive thing, because what I've seen a lot of marketing teams do, because they're so specialized within their working groups, that they create a swim lane for each individual on the team. So what ends up happening is an even more granular version of the silos that they're already part of. So if you can label the work based on the initiative that it's derivative of, I think that's great. You don't have to put it in a separate swim lane of its own to separate it from the rest of the stuff. Having that is quite enough. And I can admit that all of the tools that I've seen can do labels, columns. Something great that you can do for your visualization is also add an analysis column, what Maria was saying, to track your KPIs so that you don't finish the process before you've actually understood what the result was. So all of the tools are totally fine. I wouldn't overthink it with the tools at all. I would focus on making sure that the 6 core Kanban practices are covered and not just the visualization component. Go into the WIP limits, enforce those within your team. No tool can do that for you. It's a team-owned thing.
Definitely. Yeah, I like your comment there too on focusing more on outcomes over the ownership, right? Or the specialization there. I think we see that pattern right with dev teams a lot too, where the more we try to segment the work into classes of service or individual ownership, the more things get stuck, or it's like, well, that's not my responsibility, so I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to try to unblock that. And I think the way you described it, Monica, really sounds a lot like very outcome-driven efforts, right? Like, what's our goal? What are all the things that we have to do to get there? Pearl had one more question there, and Maria, I think this one's for you. Can you elaborate more on the marketing canvas, and is there a way to see a sample?
Absolutely. Yeah, let me share my screen here. And it really is just another way of making things visible. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Excellent. So we start with the product name and keeping the team focused on what is it that we're delivering. We can identify those user stories and really start to kind of speculate, what is the right combination of the who, the what, and the why that we're going to target. When we can get clear on who are the personas that we want to reach, a lot of times, so many companies, we hear them say, oh, anybody could use this product. And as marketers, we know that's not the answer, because you're going to be really shooting very broad with your message. And a lot of times, if you try to make it too broad, it doesn't truly connect. So we want to make this visual for the team, invite the team to come together around understanding what is that customer journey. Who is the persona we're targeting? And what's our 80-20 hypothesis? And let's pick that user story that we think is going to be the right thing. And then we have our minimum viable campaign that we're going to actually launch to market. And then we're going to retrospect from that. We're going to learn. We're going to then cycle back to the beginning and say, okay, do we want to continue that? Are there tweaks or adjustments we want to make? So the whole idea behind the Agile Marketing Canvas, this is just an excerpt from our Certified Agile Marketing Specialist course. What we want to do is we just want to create visibility. If we can get visibility, clear visibility on what it is that the team's understanding is on who we're marketing to, how they're going to interact with our product, where they're going to find us. It's just going to help us uncover those clues. That's going to help us to be able to just have a better idea as a team. What is it that we're doing, and are we on the same page? So just like we have the work visible in a Kanban board, and we know what we're working on, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture so that we know what's our strategy or direction as well.
Well, and it looks like that triggered a few questions on feedback loops and learning loops. And so I'll combine these kind of into one question for both of you. Do you implement a learning loop for improvement with your teams? And if so, how? And how do you visualize and measure feedback loops when a campaign is released to the market? So maybe we separate those. Let's start with Paul's. I think that's more specific to team improvement. So let's start with that one. How do you look for learning loops and improvement with your team specifically?
I actually have a really good technique for that. It's called a skill map. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, Paul, but it's something that I've used for sort of mapping the trajectory of different team members and the team as a whole to make sure that when we get a certain type of project or more of a certain type of project, we're well equipped to take that on based on the skills that we have in the team. And a skill map would essentially map the various levels from basic, novice, intermediate to advanced from the different team members based on a horizontal axis that looks different for every team. So it's the skills that you want to work on within your group, the ones that you'll need to capitalize on based on what you know is coming down the pipeline for your team. And I would revisit that every 6 to 9 months to see whether we've managed to achieve some of the goals that came out of that. So if we want to move more of our basic experts in email closer to intermediate, because we know we're going to have a lot of email heavy projects coming up, that's a really interesting way to see where you stand. And you'll find that some people don't consider themselves advanced, but based on the knowledge of the group as a whole, they're actually the most advanced in that subject. So they're able to bring more people closer to either intermediate or advanced level just by their experience alone. And you'll find that some colleagues within a Kanban team, for example, might have had experience in a certain area in a previous role that they don't even consider because it's not the role that they were hired in for. So I think stepping out of that comfort zone of what you were hired in for and what you can actually contribute to the upskilling of the team as a whole is essential. And the skill map sort of brings that out. And by revisiting that once in a while, you do create a feedback loop to check in whether you were able to actually move the needle on some of those learning development objectives that you identified when you did the skill map first. But it's sort of like a retrospective, right? You need to leave the skill map workshop with some actionable next steps for building skill sets deliberately in certain areas. So that tends to be a great sort of conversation starter about what skills do we need, how do we build them, and what's coming down the pipeline for us in terms of projects.
Monica, is that skill map? And same question for the Canvas. Are those things we can include in our show notes after we post our recording?
Totally.
Yeah. Great. Well, let's take one more question here from Daniel, and then we'll close out here with thoughts on what people can do if they're interested in learning more about Kanban for marketing. The last question here is, how do you visualize or measure feedback loops when a campaign is released to the market?
Yeah, so we're looking at the feedback loop when the campaign is released. A lot of times we're going to want to see what's the data. And so one of the teams that we work with that's running marketing campaigns, we're meeting every week, once a week, and we're looking at the numbers. We're looking at what was the ad spend, what were the number of clicks, how many people clicked through, what were the number of sales, and we're looking at all of the different points along that marketing and sales cycle where things could be enhanced, things could be improved. And sometimes it has to do with different areas. It could be more on the marketing side or more on the sales side. And so really having that holistic view is pretty important. Identifying what types of metrics or results you want to be looking at, and then looking at, how did that improve from, previous months, previous weeks, previous years, right? Depending on how far back you want to look at, how has the market changed? Has there been anything significant that may have impacted what it is that you're doing or the way that you're reaching that target audience? So a lot of times, there's really two main categories of looking at those feedback loop. It's looking at how is the team able to improve? How are they able to enhance? So just as we were talking about a moment ago with their skills development or how they interact as a team, where could we improve within the team? And then what's the quality of the product? And with marketing, it's what are the results? What's the quality of the results, right? What are the actual numbers looking like? And so a lot of times we'll just have a regular cadence where we actually look at the numbers, though the team members that are actually running the ads, they're going to be looking at that almost every day, right? But having everyone kind of come back and sync and having the team understand, well, which campaigns are working, which things are not. What are the things we might want to split test? Is there something that we might want to adjust? And so when we look at the Agile marketing framework that we use at the Agile Marketing Academy, it's actually based on the foundations of the Heart of Agile, which is created by Alistair Coburn, one of the co-authors of the Agile Manifesto back in 2001. And with the Heart of Agile, it's just collaborate, deliver, reflect, and improve. And that's the cycle. And so we're going to go through and we're going to look at, okay, let's collaborate around what we're releasing. Let's focus on delivering something, delivering an increment that we can actually see the result of. Now let's reflect on the data. Let's also take a temperature check of the team. How are they feeling? And then what are we going to improve? What's one change that we're going to make? One thing that we're going to adjust? Because we don't want to change 5 things and then we don't know what made the difference, right? And so that's where the split testing comes in. We're going to have a way that we can tell in advance that we're going to measure what got that better result, what was the change that worked. And maybe we take an email list of 100 to 1,000 people, and we only take, out of that list of 1,000 people, we only take 200 people for the first campaign. We actually see how did that work. Then we run a campaign to the second 200 people, and then the next set of 200 people. We can actually split test within the launch of any kind of campaign in a variety of different ways. If we're using different ads, we can say, okay, what picture is going to work best? What's the ad copy that's going to work best? And so we always want to be thinking about, what are the general metrics that we want to look at? We probably want to have a regular interval that we look at those and we review them as a team. And then also looking at what are those adjustments going to be? And as we're reflecting and improving, making changes where we can tell what made the impact. And that's going to help us be able to fine tune what it is that we're doing and really help to bring together that bridge between marketing and sales.
Well, let's close out here with one last question. And I would like to hear from both of you what your recommendations are for others in the community who are interested in starting to apply some Kanban practices to how they do marketing. Monica, do you want to take that first?
Yeah, totally. Go for it. I mean, maybe I'm a little biased, but I feel like, as marketers, our problem is not that we're not fast enough. I think many marketers are actually fast based on necessity. But prioritization and that healthier, more sustainable pace that we're looking for in a marketing environment that allows us to really achieve a lot of impact without having to, stay over the weekend to make sure a campaign is out in market. I think that's what a Kanban method for structuring our work can really give us. So even if you start small, the cool thing about Kanban in comparison to Scrum is that it doesn't ask you to sort of flip the process on its head and start with something totally new, alienating your team in the process. It's a start where you are framework. So I think it's actually a really great entry point if you want to take those first steps into a more agile, lean way of working. Kanban combines both of those methodologies in a sense. So absolutely go for it. Start with visualizing your board, get all those to-do lists out in the open. Because everybody has them. Every marketer has a personal to-do list. So if we combine them, we get to that team level where we can actually start to see some improvement in the process. And then add WIP limits. That's all you need to get started, in my opinion. And everything else will sort of come naturally. All those improvements, all the way to Monte Carlo simulations, which I saw mentioned in the chat as well, which is sort of the end point. And I don't know if we're there, but starting is simple with Kanban, much simpler than with Scrum, in my opinion. So go for it.
Monica. And Maria, any closing thoughts from you on where to start?
Yeah, really, it's about making the work visible. And so when you're looking at what all the team is working on, a lot of times, because people are looking at their piece, they're not necessarily seeing the whole picture. So sometimes what we'll do is we'll get the team together and say, let's build out the visual funnel with Post-it notes. Now you can do that in a room on the wall, or you could do it with virtual collaboration tools. So there's many different tools that allow you to put up virtual Post-it notes, move them around, add arrows, look at what's the flow of what it is that we're working on. So let's get an idea of the bigger picture of all the things that we're going to do, each and every piece, each component. What are the possible entry points where someone could discover what our product or service is? What are some of the lead magnets, free value we might give them? What's the action we want them to take? Where do they go? Is there a landing page? What's on that page? What are all the pieces that need created? And what I love doing is taking a look at that bigger picture, getting it all visible, and then saying, what would be a minimum viable campaign? Can we break down the work to be in smaller chunks so we can get something out to market faster? And then we can say, hey, let's actually see what the feedback is for the essence of what this campaign is before we go and shoot a commercial or a video, before we go into all that. Does this message even resonate? So really, it's make the work visible and break the work down. And just from making the work visible, being able to visualize that on a Kanban board, looking at what's the priority order. Is the whole team aware that that's the priority order? Well, if you have one common board, that's easy to see. As you see things moving across from to do and progress to done, again, I love that roadblock column. Look for the things that you get stuck on. Use best practices like pairing to get past those things. Sometimes it's just decisions, or there's creative and you're like going back and forth on which color or what picture or what should this say. And so really looking at breaking the work down, making it visible, and looking at eliminating those roadblocks because you make it visible and you can see where you're getting stuck. Tracking the cycle time helps as well. So you can say, okay, this has sat here for a week. What's going on here? I've had teams where it's like, once you ask, why is this roadblock? Sometimes the answer is something very simple. It's like, oh, well, we're waiting on another team to give us feedback. Okay, well, where is this team? Oh, well, they work down the hall one floor below us. Okay, could someone maybe walk over there if they're not responding to the emails? Could you pick up the phone if you're working virtually? Can you pick up the phone and call the team, right? Like, we don't have to be stuck if we think we're stuck. What can we do to work past that? So making the work visible can help with that, and breaking the work down can make it much more manageable.
Absolutely. Well, a huge thank you to Monica and Maria for being our first guests on the Kanban for Everyone series here. We'll be doing these live interviews every 2 weeks. And if you're interested in joining us 2 weeks from today, we'll be talking about UX with Jeff Gotthelf and John Coleman. Big round of applause for you guys. I know not everyone else can clap for you, but thank you so much. I think you shared a lot of great tips and tricks for everyone here in getting started. These recordings will be posted on our ProKanban.org YouTube channel. And we'll be sure to include in the notes on the YouTube recording post any additional references and materials that we talked about here today. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Thanks for the invitation, Colleen.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. And thank you, everyone that joined us.